welcome to another edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of FirmFlex and managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, a civil rights and criminal defense firm here in Connecticut. With me, as always, my man, Seth Price, down there, New Digs, in the Delmarva Peninsula area. Someone mentioned Delmarva the other day, but Seth, if you don't know him, is the managing partner of Price Benowitz, a DC, Maryland, Virginia. That's where I get the Delmarva thing from, and South Carolina law firm. He's also the president of Blue Shark Digital, who handles SEO for hundreds of law firms around the country. So, Seth, as always, how's your week going?
It's going pretty well. Blue Shark just moved into its new clubhouse, which is sort of a good pick me up. You know, we're sitting in this netherworld. I'm sitting here negotiating down space at the law firm. And as we talked about on prior shows, I threw the keys back at Blue Shark and said, okay, we don't need all this space because nobody was showing up. And we now took sort of a half space, but it's like a studios. It has enough space for about half to 2/3 of the employees to show up on a given day. So teams are coming, conference room space, outdoor meeting space. It's pretty cool. I can't wait for you to see it.
Yeah, I can't wait to come down there to DC, get to check it out. Is it in DC proper? Is it outside DC?
It's in DC proper. It's this cool area, Union Market, where they've literally taken an industrial area and turned it into this sort of destination. There are two massive high-end food courts, almost like you might see at the Brooklyn Heights waterfront, as well as like a bunch of developments with like 1-star Michelin restaurants. And, you know, it took what was essentially the hood and, industrial and gentrified is doing an understatement. It has taken nothing. And it's not like something that, hey, there's residential, we upgraded it. This was like, we are basically almost like when you build a stadium, they have taken over a neighborhood and it is, beyond gentrification.
Well, that's cool. Speaking of stadiums, I'm really excited. I got my call yesterday, and in 9 days from today, our friend Jim Hacking and myself will be sitting in a suite at MetLife Stadium, or JetLife Stadium, as we Jet fans likes to call it, hot off the heels of our great successful Mike White first game start. And we're going to get to watch a Jets game together. It's one of these things, we're constantly networking. I made a connection with a friend who knew somebody who's getting us into a suite. And so we're going to be suite side, being able to watch the game. I'm really excited. Jim's going to be in town. I'm spending like the whole weekend with him. Friday night, we're going to a concert. Saturday night, he's with his son. Sunday, he's going to a football game with me. And I'm going to have a full weekend of Jim Hacking coming up next weekend. So I'm looking forward to that.
I would say two middle-aged guys going to a Jets game, to quote the Breakfast Club, sad and demented yet social.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk to you a little bit about something we've alluded to on the past couple of shows, but we've been suffering at my firm a little bit of dip in our sales, and me being a systems guy, I took a step back, and really had to do a deep dive. I found, after a lot of looking and searching, I was having a conflict with some pay-per-click ads that were not running because they were essentially canceling each other out with another ad group that for some reason got turned on. I had thought it was off, and this summer it got turned on, and so we were not getting the click-throughs that we wanted. But that led me to want to talk a little bit this week about sort of knowing your market, knowing when your leads are down, how to respond to those things, because, like many of us, we get into a rhythm, and then when something upsets that rhythm, and all of a sudden, your sales, your weekly sales of whatever it is, $50, $75, $100,000 or $10,000 goes away, you start to freak out a little bit. And when it happens over 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you start to really freak out, like I was doing. And we had built in for years a cushion to avoid freaking out so much, but COVID kind of wiped out that cushion. We're still building that back up. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the ebbs and flows of a B2C law practice, because I think it's something that a lot of people experience, but not a lot of people talk about. You talk about, oh, and I'm flush and the phone's ringing off the hook, but you don't really talk about when you're wondering why the phones aren't ringing at all. So
Couldn't agree more.
let's talk
Great
about that,
topic.
your experiences with that, because you've got a lot of B2C verticals.
Absolutely, and we get it. So I think that I've looked at this issue, which is an amazing topic to talk about because it includes so many elements. As we talk about it, we're going to be digging down, almost just like James Michener in The Source, different layers of this archaeological dig to figure out. Because okay, your numbers are down. And to me, like the first thing I always do as a digital marketer, as an SEO first, is has any major ranking slipped? So for me, for DC, for PI, criminal, trust and estates, family, we have for legacy time, for multiple years, if not decades, held a very, very strong position in the SERPs. And so the first thing I do is I just do an immediate, hey, has something fallen off the cliff from an organic point of view, whether it be local or whether it be the 3-pack? First thing, right? That's my immediate go-to. You have inconsistent SERP results, but still a pretty dominant long-term player. But if something wasn't there, I tell a story that somebody messed with our prime subject matter area on the GMB, taking personal injury away, and all of a sudden my personal injury listing disappeared. So is there something specific, or is there Google has suspended a listing in the GMB? Is there something? And I'm going to assume for a second that that's not the case here for the sake of our conversation here, because that's the first thing I go to. And for the most part, that is not the major place, but it's like one of those areas that I think everybody needs to look at. If for me, that's there. For you, it might be PPC. If your PPC is not running, there you go. Like if you're making your money from PPC and all of a sudden you're not spending money, there's no spend, that would be a pretty good indication that and again, if there's spend, is it being spent on the right ads? Are you not getting keywords on? All that type of stuff. So I would say that when those things are not the issue, and let's again assume for the sake of argument that you alluded there may have been some issues there, but to me, even though we're digital marketing focused, you may be social and paid focused. The place where most people see an issue when there's a hole very often is intake. And we've had Gary Falkowitz on the show. We've talked a lot about intake, but we probably don't spend enough time talking about it in the sense that is where, if there's a hole in the bucket, that is likely, in my experience, to be one of those places that none of us want to acknowledge. But for those people listening, if you're not listening to recorded calls, you're leaving an opportunity for something like this to happen slowly over time. I assume at this point you have systems in place to listen to recorded calls.
I don't, because it's illegal in Connecticut to have. You need to have two-party consent.
Why not? Why not put the whisper on the call? You can't put a whisper.
We cannot.
Can you have Could you have it answered in a place other than Connecticut?
That's a good question. I don't know how that would apply.
Let's find out. I think
many of my people are answering and doing intakes overseas. I don't know if Honduras or Colombia.
With the whisper and that, do it. I don't want to see you in jail. I don't want you losing anything. But I feel like it is something like the excuse that it's ethically not allowed. Obviously, you're not expecting to lose your license. You got to figure that out, in my opinion, because every time I thought that I was good, and I did, I think I had a really good team when I was a small firm with 3-4 intake people. But the moment you scale, the moment you don't know each of these people, but even when you do, people have a bad day, they're doing it not the way you want it. The first thing is that likely to be for a complete plummet? No, but you have overseas people. And we both know that there's been issues in general. It's got to be recorded.
So it's not recorded, but it's listened to live. Like I said, I've had an auditor. So what they'll do is they'll actually set up a Google Meet, have that open, have the other person on speakerphone, talking to their lead. So they're listening to them live.
But do they know that those specific calls are being listened to versus the average call?
So yes, they do. They do because
Right.
they're
And
part of it.
I'm just saying in
Yeah.
general, I feel like, again, we're playing detective here. There's no magic
Right.
answer. But to me, I think that if you can get an ethics opinion that the stuff's being answered offshore, that those calls are recorded, ideally, to me, that's even more of a risk. Like, it's bad enough here. Again, we've had better success, and we've talked about this, and we'll talk about it again. We've really moved a large portion of our intake overseas, and I was scared to death the quality would drop. In the criminal space, I've seen it go up in
Yeah.
that people want the job, they follow the program, and they're not going rogue.
Yeah.
It's people need their job, and they're following it rather than I'll do what I want. If they don't like me, I'll just find something else quickly.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been very, very blessed. The overseas talent that I've been able to get in are truly committed, and they're excellent, excellent at what they do, and they're always looking to improve. So I've been very, very happy with the talent that I've been
Understood,
able to
but
find.
even you've had a couple false starts with it.
Yeah.
As happy as you are, let's make sure that it's for good reason. We got to figure that out for you. I don't know how it'll be done, but I think your homework is to get ethics counsel and figure out, how do I do this? Can I do a whisper? Can I do it for overseas people? What can I do so that I have? And again, you're listening to some of them live. I get it. It's not like you're not being reckless, but I feel like every time somebody who hasn't recorded starts listening, it is humbling and often, earth shattering. So I leave it at that. So the next piece I was going to say, which is something that I think is very useful for our audience, because we all live in our own little vacuum worlds. Like, we have Max Law and we can talk to people. We have the guild, but there is an isolation. And for me, my model, I have different lawyers, and I have lawyers that do 7 figures a year on their own, grossing, and they'll come to me, and every August they come to me panicked. There's no business. I'm like, what month is it? Where are we? So what I would say is, and that's the more sophisticated answer because you have years of experience, is before you flip out completely, it's checking with your colleagues at the courthouse, checking the docket to see what's there. What are the other private attorneys doing? Now, if everybody is saying, yeah, I'm fine. And there have been times in my life where people sort of bullshit you. You don't get the right answer.
Right.
But if you have your close buddies who can give you a real indication, are they up or are they down, you just need to crowdsource that. Because often what I find, and we saw this in DC was, and this has been a slow drip, in DC we went from 4 attorneys to like 1 that's working 80% full, from my point of view, not their point of view, that keeping an ear to the ground as to where things are. Is a certain market dried up? Has this town lost all money where there's really no private clients? Have the police stopped making arrests because they're pissed about some sort of protest? And figuring out not just your marketing. So assuming marketing is working and your intake is working, is there a market force that is affecting what's going on? If somebody tells me they're a divorce practice and divorces are down right now, I'm like, hey, you better look at those first 2 things, because it's either your marketing or your intake. But if you're in criminal defense right now, given everything that's happened between COVID restrictions in certain markets, between, Black Lives Matter protests and DC insurrections, all these things, progressive prosecutors have had a marked effect on the criminal defense practice, and that you need to take that into account before you flip out and start firing your in-house marketing person.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting. Every practice I think has a little bit of ebb and flow to it. I mean, criminal has their times a year where they're busier. Divorce, I know from my history, divorce is big at the beginning of the year. People, they finally get through the holidays and they say, I'm not going to do this again next year. But there's also a divorce, a bit of a slowdown in August as people are getting back to school, and so they don't want to add to their to-do list at that point. I don't really know about trust in the states. If there is a
Trust in
time
the
of the year, it's
states, I'll tell
probably
you.
right around tax time, right? They're
No,
taking.
you know what's funny? No, I thought that for the probate world, they get very busy. People hold on through the holidays and pass away in end of the year, beginning of the year, January, and that January becomes one of their busiest months. Has been my experience.
See, those are the types of things that you really sort of have a mile high view of what's going on in your industry, and you don't necessarily get that when you're just handling your files a year, whether it's 100 or 1,000. You really do need to crowdsource and get an idea of what's going on. Let me give you a perfect example. So in the state of Connecticut, we average around 14 to 16,000 DUI cases a year. Right now, we called the DMV earlier today, and there's been 4,000 in the state. So you're down 66% or more in our state. And then when I look at my numbers, I'm like, wow, I'm surviving.
Hold, time out. Not only is that there, but how many DUIs come from a traffic stop? How many criminal cases come from? So not only is that there, but I think you're answering your own question that everything is stemming from that, because if enforcement is down, everything, the number of your cases that stem from a traffic stop is probably not insignificant. And if those are down by 2/3, not that there are other ways, people who come through the system, but that's a significant feeder. That means one of your, probably arguably the largest feeder of criminal cases, is down by 2/3.
Yeah, it has been. And of course, I'm happy to be surviving it. We've seen some increases in other areas, but it'll be interesting to see over the next, 6 months to 18 months where we're able to sort of gain back market share, and also really sort of be able to figure out, where our firm is going. Because I think we're sort of at an inflection point, coming out of COVID. I'd love to go back to the way it was, in fall of 2019, but I don't think my practice is going back there. So now I
don't think it's your practice. I think it's the market. So, I mean, yes, you are correct. It's your practice, but it is not like, hey, I don't have the staff, or I don't have the culture, or any of that stuff. It's the widgets are not. Widgets are not there.
So I went through and quickly made a list of things that people can look at if, assuming their intake is all set, the things that they can sort of look at. I want to riff on them quickly, get your quick thoughts on those topics as to where people should be looking. And then what I'd like to do is take a break, hear from our sponsors, and then I want to talk to you about a topic that's been bandying about in some of the online forums in the second half of the show. But my intake people, I created a system for it, and the system basically says, if your leads are off, here's what I want you to check. First and foremost, we got to check pay-per-click, because pay-per-click is a big driver of intakes into our type of practice. Simple things like, is your credit card expired or has it been declined? Did your ads go offline because of a quality score? Did you pause a campaign by mistake? And if you're doing like me, if you're running a lot of video campaigns on YouTube, one of the things you have to realize, and one of my junior marketing people didn't realize this, is that when you set them up, you actually set a budget and an end date. It's not like regular pay-per-click that sort of set it and let it run. So you got to watch out for those things. Local service ads. One of the things that I found was an issue is that we would upload our malpractice insurance, because you got to give them your malpractice insurance to stay verified. But it got sort of stuck in this verification loop. And we found that you actually had to call in and get them to manually validate your malpractice info, because it wasn't being done automatically. But then other things like checking your credit card for is your budget appropriate given the mass adoption of LSA? I mean, a lot of us in this community set up our LSA early on, and they said, "Oh, I'm going to do, I'll set my budget." But now that more people, I mean, you look in LSA for PI, and there's like 100 lawyers. It's like, I don't know how anybody's getting any PI work out of LSA. I mean, maybe people are.
And now what you're seeing is the numbers are moving north. It's what I assume would happen. When you see a $2,000 call, that's our future. Like they'll keep pushing until some schmuck says, I'm still good with it.
Can you imagine paying $2,000? I mean, I guess but what if it's a minor impact soft tissue?
Well, I mean, $15,000. It's a numbers game. So let's not take that. Let's take numbers like 1,000. Well, if you're signing up, if you're in like jurisdictions, the problem I have in my jurisdiction, we don't get the ability to sign everything up because of contrib and other issues. But if you're in a jurisdiction where you can sign up 2 out of 3, and it costs you $1,500 a case, that's what people are paying off TV. So right. Yes, you may get one that's a dud, but it's the cost of doing business.
All right. Google My Business. Have you seen situations where profiles wind up getting suspended out of
Oh,
nowhere. I mean, we talked about
you
this last year on the show. My
right.
speeding ticket, I mean, it was cruising, 200 plus reviews, and then one day they just said, "Nope, you're no longer verified." And it
Right.
took me like 8 weeks, and our traffic dropped, ridiculously. I
Dramatic.
mean,
Yeah, I hear it.
dramatically. I mean, I was crying at
Yeah,
night.
no, we've seen it. We haven't seen a lot of these random acts of suspensions of late. We saw last year a huge amount. I don't think this was your issue. It was a lot of other people's issues. Was the virtual office,
Mm.
where they might have had a real office with an egregious. They might have sort of wink, wink, nod, nod, but they, we're here, but nobody will ever know. Well, Google did. So you're good until you're not good. But checking that out, that's very. And there are two types of suspensions. Topic for another day. There's sort of like the suspensions where you're gone, and a soft suspension where it shows a suspension but you're still showing, and that's just the worst purgatory. So again, not the worst. The worst is you're gone. But it is one of these things where you have to deal with it while it's still there. But it's definitely something, if you don't take care of, you'll end up back in Jay's shoes.
Yeah, you don't want to be there. Trust me, folks. Trust me. And then the other last things, if your leads are off, you should really probably do a visual inspection of your website. Make sure it's up and running. Make sure your phone numbers are displaying appropriately. Your tracking numbers are
Make
coming
sure
are
to
coming.
look, making sure that you test the numbers, because you're using tracking numbers. Make sure that somebody didn't not pay a bill, or you stopped using a service. Make sure the numbers get to your intake from the website, and make sure your forms. We have a protocol in place to test the forms every month, maybe even more so. There have been times where that form is down and you lost some leads, and there's no worse feeling.
Oh, that's the last thing I was going to say is check your forms, because all of a sudden a broken line
I
can.
would argue that those last few should be done no matter what.
Right.
A J. Ruane system should have that in there, where, especially if you're leveraging overseas labor, that they're checking your forms and they're checking your phone numbers on a periodic basis, and you're not leaving that to chance.
Yeah. So what we have implemented now is we actually have one of our marketing VAs. Their job is to do a visual inspection of every website, run speed tests, run all those things every month, so that we know what's going on and that type of thing. Because I think it's important. We spend a lot of time on our intake. We spend a lot of time on our marketing. And if you've got the marketing working, if you've got the intake working, the leads should be there. And if they're not, you're not gonna be able to afford to keep going.
And I
And
think the
that's
biggest problem is there's good intentions like this. The sign of a true system that works is if that person leaves, does it continue to happen? Or do you look back 2 years later and say, oh, we were doing it, but Francis left, and now we don't have any information for the last year and a half?
that's a very good point. Okay, folks, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick short break. You'll hear from our sponsors when we get back. We're going to talk about a topic that came up last night in the forums, and something that I've been thinking about lately, and it's called the entrepreneur positivity cycle. So come back and we'll talk about that. We'll see you in a few. Hi, I'm Jay from FirmFlex, and I want to let you in on a foolproof way to drive viable clients to your door via social media, using a social funnel. You see, social media is a different type of marketing, and using the wrong methods won't land you clients. It will turn people off to your brand. But there's a way to get those clients to opt in, learn more about you, learn why you are great, and then want to contact you, whether you handle trust and estates, or family law, or personal injury, or any other type of law. And that's using a multiple stepped funnel that delivers the right message at the right time. You can get that message with a FirmFlex social funnel. A FirmFlex social funnel is the way to drive qualified leads into your client base. Our funnel program gives you the ultimate control over your new client funnel. We design, implement, and set up all the triggers for a multi-step funnel, bringing attention to your brand and slowly warming potential clients from cold to red hot and ready to engage. And the best part is, you can start the whole process right online. Visit get 'em 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 '
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
And we're back, Seth. And this is a topic that, it's interesting to me. The other night, Chad Burton posted something in the big Maximum Lawyer group about toxic positivity. And this is something that I've been thinking about. I've been talking about with one of my friends, especially given the fact that they've now legalized gambling and opened up the apps here in Connecticut. And I was joking with a friend of mine that for the most part, gamblers are the eternal optimists in that they always bet the over. They think, of course, their bets are going to come in. But then I was thinking about us as entrepreneurs. And I think one of the reasons why we're outliers as lawyer entrepreneurs is that we tend to be optimists. We see something new and we say we're going to implement this and this is going to make all the difference, and we're going to this new way of tracking our leads is going to work, or this new marketing idea that I'm going to put into place is going to make the things happen for me. And part and parcel of being an entrepreneur is this, short memory for the stuff that fails and this unbridled positivity. But does being this positive person when it comes to your business, does that hurt your business in that sometimes you might bite off more than you can chew, might go chasing down rabbit holes, might actually waste money when your core things you could work on to do better? I know a lot of people who, don't ever listen to their intake calls like we talked about in the first segment, and all they're doing is adding more and more leads to a faulty intake system. So let's talk a little bit about positivity and whether or not it can hurt you in this process.
Well, let's start with the positive side of positivity. Right. Which is because if you don't, part of I remember, I think it was my rehearsal dinner, a good friend of mine said, even at that point in my sojourn, my career, I had, a bunch of real estate issues and a bunch of people had screwed us over really badly, defrauded us, all sorts of awful stuff. And they were like, I don't forget how they talked about it in the speech, but every day you have to wake up. And despite all that absurdity, all the people that have done nasty things to you, we both had them, both on the legal side, on the marketing side, in the sort of greater social sphere that we travel in. Weird bad things happen, and you just got to sort of brush it off. There was somebody went on a diatribe at Blue Shark. They apologized a few hours later, saying they were in a bad place. But how do you just brush things off, shake it off, as my 7-year-old's favorite artist would say? How do you get through this? And I think that so you're getting to the one point where it's can there be too much positivity? I'm saying that if you don't have a certain amount of it, you can't get anywhere because people will steal from you. You'll have employees. I got an employee right now who never read his manual. Then we told him to read it, told him where to read. He still didn't do it. And now I'm dealing with whether, how are we going to change salary deal? Or, my point is there are people that do awful things to us on a daily basis as entrepreneurs. When you're an employee, you come to work, your boss may do bad stuff to you. It's a whole different matrix of bad stuff. But from the point of view of an entrepreneur, we have all these things, all these people that are sort of fighting our ability to build something. And if you don't have that resiliency and that ability to shake things off, and that ability to forget, a long memory. I joke, my mother-in-law remembers everything and she has feuds with people because of it. If you're able to sort of let stuff go, the better you can let stuff go. We've talked about this in a bunch of different circumstances, the better off that you will be. I'm not saying you want to stay best friends with somebody who hurt you. I'm saying that if you can't find a way to personally move beyond it and continue moving the ball forward for your whole team rather than getting sucked back by it, that's a real liability. And the only way to build and expand is to sort of not acknowledge, but to be able to sort of deal with the fact that there will be these things. And if there's not a certain level of positivity, I just don't think you can make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, there are some days where if I didn't have this sense of positivity, I'd never get out of bed, just because you know the amount of weight that you're carrying. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to another lawyer, and he said to me, I don't know how you deal with the stress of making your payroll every week. And I was like, yeah, when I look at it in the abstract, it's a pretty big nut that I got to. It's more than I made my entire first year as a lawyer. I am having to pay out weekly in payroll. And so I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm handling that stress pretty well. But I think it's important to not confuse an entrepreneur's positivity with a blindness and avoiding the reality of your situation. So I think you need to have a little bit of both.
But that exactly, again, two things that resonate. I just passionate about this. A guy that I knew from the late '90s when I was in the dot-com bubble in New York. One thing he talked about, which I think that both of us are guilty of, and many entrepreneurs are, when you get a new employee, you talk about them as if this is you're a suitor, and this will be your soulmate. This person has gone to these schools, or they've done these things, they can solve this problem, or they cost so little, and we fall in love with this person on the way in before their human foibles come to play. That's on one side. The flip side is you do see a lot of entrepreneurs fall down with the ship. During the '90s, these stocks were on the rise. The bubble burst in April of 2000, and a lot of these things became worthless. And I had people that I knew were sitting in office with like empty chairs. Everybody else is gone. They were like, hundreds of millions on paper one day and zero the next. And they rode it all the way down. They never cashed out a single dollar to sort of like, took out enough to be able to buy a house. They were like, I'm all in. And I think the most successful people are all in, but it cuts both ways. You put these blinders on, which is what allows you to move forward. But I think part of the reason we're both successful, but not like, you look around, there are people who have gone faster and higher, has been that. But some of those people, and they're in the extended legal commerce scene, where they do put the blinders on and they keep going, whether it's ethics issues or whether it's business model issues, you can become blind to it because you are so focused on moving the ball forward.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think people need to do is know yourself. I mean, that's really, if you're going to go on this journey of being an entrepreneur, if you're going to go on this journey of running the practice and all the responsibilities that go with it. Not that you necessarily need to go into therapy like Seth, you and I do for each other every week, but you need to be honest with yourself about where your own issues lie with respect to positivity or negativity. I mean, I know people that have partners who are the opposite. They say no to everything because that's just who they are. And it causes such great conflict in the firm. And then the firm isn't able to move forward. The firm isn't able to really sort of accomplish the things they want to do because they've picked a partner who doesn't necessarily want to be an entrepreneur, wanted to have a law partner. And luckily for you, lucky for me, we both have partners who understand what we bring to the table and appreciate that. But I don't think everybody necessarily, the first person they pick is going to wind up being that person. So it's something that I think, you have to think about. You definitely have to think about. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that today because I think it matters to some people. But quick show today. I think it's good though. The last couple of shows have been good. We haven't had many guests. We've been able to dive deeply into some of these topics that I think are important. And I really welcome other people's reactions. So wherever you're listening along, please make sure to comment and let us know what your thoughts about this. How has positivity or your perspective impacted your life and your journey as an entrepreneur? Because those are the types of things that we want to talk about. So, Seth, I think that's it for today. I mean, it's a quick show, but it's a good show.
It's a good show. Good show.
All right. Excellent.
So, you got a Jets victory, a good show. It's a killer week for you.
Yeah, exactly. I got another Jets game tonight, so we'll see how it goes. After I'm gonna sit down. My wife's going out. I'm gonna get the kids to bed. I'm gonna start the game a little late and be alone, either celebrating or crying into my ice cream bowl to see, because it's going to be one or the other. I'm going to be happy or I'm going to be miserable. And as a Jets fan, I'm used to being miserable. That's for sure. So if you want to keep up with Seth, be sure to check out his SEO Insider. It's available on YouTube. Just follow the Blue Shark page. That'll get you him. And his SEO Insider gives you great information all about digital marketing. Of course, if you want to follow me, stay with me. Join my Systemizing Your Law Firm for Growth Facebook group. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the system that I created for if our leads are down, the checklist that we got to walk through. I'm going to post that as a system upcoming in the next couple of days, so that way you can get that if you want to be part of that group as well. Of course, you can always catch us every week here on Max Growth Live every Thursday in the group that you're watching it in, or syndicated on the Maximum Lawyer podcast or our own standalone podcast, wherever you get your free podcasts. Of course, we want to thank John Fisher for allowing us to broadcast into his group, and Maximum Lawyer Media for allowing us to be out there and with them all along. We love having this large group of people that we are able to engage with. Seth, any parting words for today?
No, just have a great week, and can't wait to be back next week talking more shop.
All right, man. So listen up, folks. Be sure to tune us in every week. Don't tune us out, tune us in. And if you have any questions, always you can reach either Seth or myself on any of the social platforms or by email. DM us if you want. We're always happy to talk about growing your firm. And for that, we'll be back next week. Bye for now.